is loading now.
All right.
Loading. And there we go.
All right. Well, welcome to Constellation 2025. This is our final session. It is a showcase of works being done by SFWA members involved in the game industry and the comics industry. My name is Will McDermott. I am the chair of the SFWA Game Writing Committee, and we have some other game writers, designers with us today who are going to present some of their work. And I think with that, we'll just get right into it with Mark. I'm going to butcher this, Sabalauskas.
Very good. Excellent.
Excellent. Mark's going to introduce himself, and then he's going to showcase some of his work. So go ahead and get started.
Hey, I'm Mark Sabalauskas. I do a couple of game-related things in speculative
Final
fiction. My
session.
latest
It
game.
is a showcase of works being done.
Oops,
Sorry about that.
that's okay. So my latest game is Advertising and Anti-Heroes, but what I thought I would introduce is my game Return to the Stars, which is an optimistic space opera role-playing game. So let me just see that. Can you see my slides?
Nope, I can share them or give you the option to share. It's up to you.
How about
Yeah,
that?
go ahead and share, I think, for all of us, unless someone says otherwise.
Oh, there we go, Mark.
All right, excellent. All right, so Return to the Stars was a game that actually, um, in the dark era of the first Trump administration, I uh, was looking for doing something that was optimistic. And a big uh, influence in my life as a young child, and that what really drew me into science fiction was Star Trek, which was very much confronting a world of challenges around the war in Vietnam, the struggle for civil rights, an era of political assassinations and turmoil. And I thought I wanted to create a game that was in a setting that was focused on telling those types of stories. So, Return to the Stars is all about painting a better future in bold primary colors. And I'm basically mashing up everything that I love about science fiction and fantasy culture and gaming, and mash it up with a sort of episodic style of play that's inspired by Star Trek. So my pitch is Star Trek meets WorldCon if WorldCon was actually a world. So in my setting, there actually is a world called the Convention that was uh, uh, founded to celebrate all the classical arts in the 20th century, including uh, cosplay and uh, discussing if Yuri on Ice from the 23rd century, that reboot was the best one. And these people, after galactic travel becomes impossible, are the gamers and geeks and science nerds and enthusiasts who gather together to reach out and start reconnecting with other worlds. So that's basically the idea. You play as someone who is enthusiastic about pop culture and is enthusiastic about going to strange new worlds and helping people uh, and reconnecting them to the broader galaxy. So I was fortunate enough to get a Indie Groundbreaker nomination for that, and was uh, covered in Polygon's The Future of Tabletop Role Playing Game is Hope, all about hopepunk games. So that's my pitch for the game, but as I'm addressing a audience of science fiction writers, my question is, why should you care? And yes, it's a fun game. And yes, there's a free quick start. You can get it and go play for yourself. And then there's a whole bunch of other content available, including the full game, four zines that have expansions for it. But the other thing is, because I am publishing these zines, I'm also open to pitches for adventures. So rather than pitch this to you myself as someone who's like, oh, play this game because you tell these interesting stories, I'm going to frame my discussion of the game as, hey, I'm open for pitches. If anyone would like to tell a sort of Star Trek meets pop culture type of story, and let you think about the game that way. So, what I'm really interested in looking in, and I've published seven zines that expand the game, are stories with strong science fiction hooks, adventures that happen because of technological or social progress, or that comment on our present day and our lack of social progress that one might hope for in the future. This is a game that is based on the Fate uh, SRD. So you, as a game designer, don't have to worry about mechanics. Really, just setting up a interesting situation and what the likely outcomes are, and explaining that situation and the possibilities for drama in it to the game master. You don't have to master stats or anything like that. If you want to have an adventure as a game master, you can quickly improvise those types of details yourself. And as a game writer, you just really need to give me the meat and the promise of what the adventure is. You don't have to master all the details of a 500-page book before you can share that with other people. So typically, the adventures are about going to some undiscovered world or finding some scientific anomaly or a society that's been cut off from galactic civilization, and going and having something there that engages the characters, assuming that they want to help. These are people who are coming from a post-scarcity society. They don't need anything. They're just looking to reconnect these worlds. And so it's not about, oh, they want to go there to take advantage, to make money, to trade. That's not on the table. There's some sort of moral imperative or mystery or challenge that faces their ideals should be the motivation. Um, and again, it's all about the improv. So the themes for my games are really humanism. It's all about wanting to give people a chance to explore what a better world could look like and how people in this better world could confront those challenges. I have an entire section in the rule book around why the civilization doesn't have a prime directive. Instead, they have a respect for other people's rights to have societies, and a also a sense of obligation and universal human rights. So there can be conflict between the two of those concepts, but there isn't a concept between, oh, we have an edict for isolationism, or we have a civilizing mission to change people's lives to be like us. The heroes in this game are perfectly content letting other people live their very different lives. They are cosmopolitans, but if they see something where people's fundamental um, human rights are not being respected, they feel also they have an obligation to intervene. So other themes, space opera, we're talking Star Wars, Star Trek, melodramatic adventures, and then going back to those contemporary challenges. So, for example, one game that adventure that someone had written for me was all about imagining a world where the government had a control over an anti-aging drug, and they wanted to prevent people from opposing their authoritarian regime. So they instituted a social credit score and had uh, a, anti-aging drugs being given to their supporters and not people who resisted their desires. So it both gave us a chance to have a case where really it was the young, hot, sexy people who are the authoritarian nightmares, and the people with wrinkles and lack of hair being the rebels, but also to explore things about what does it mean to have your government paying attention to your social media and making decisions based on how supportive are you of them. Things that we're trying to avoid is exotification of existing cultures, really stories about the failures of science. Not that science is always right, but uh, there is a real sense where people are resisting the power of science to do things like vaccinate us, or to be something that can be an impartial measure of truth apart from what people feel, what their sentiments are, or what their leader wants them to believe. So for our game, what we're looking for are you can have challenges around science or technology, but the story shouldn't be about them always failing or assuming that institutions will always fail and can never be expected to function to make people's lives better. There's a great amount of dystopian literature. There's a great uh, number of cynical games. That's just not what this game is trying to do. We're trying to picture a better world and what does it mean for people wanting to get involved in helping others. And then finally, what are my inspirations? Hope punk is a big one. I actually commissioned Alexandra Rowland to write what she feels is her best stab at defining what hope punk means. As well, of course, solar punk, Afrofuturism. For me, one big inspiration was Bryn's essay comparing the notions of Star Wars and its magical chosen one heroes versus Star Trek's very sort of more coming from a position of liberal democracy. And uh, uh, Arrival is a big one. The philosopher Kwame Anthony Apea's cosmopolitanism and its way of thinking about and feeling about the world, where there are plural ways of being that are co-equal. And what does that mean? Was a big one, as well as Martha Nussbaum's The Fragility of Goodness, and trying to think about how, despite our best efforts, there are challenges to goodness. So that's what the game is about from a theme point of view. In terms of writing for it, really, uh, we've set up the world building so that you can focus on adventure. There are no communication faster than speed of travel, so people don't have to dial back home to get orders. They have to make choices and decisions. Um, uh, the technology that we have established in the setting does not allow digital computers to go through hyperspace. So regardless of whether or not there's AI in our world, um, AI creations can't spread from world to world. So the stories are really all about what it means to be a human being confronting the problems of other human beings. And if you meet an AI on this world that was developed there, well, that's fine. It's not going to be something that shows up anywhere else. So really, because the galaxy has been isolated, you can basically create any sort of planet of the week that you want. Because it's had time to stew and create its own special version of technology. There's no imperative for the world the players come from be the best at technology. But likewise, because of the limitations of no one having been able to travel before, you don't have to know where the borders are as an adventure writer. Everything can always be fresh in your world for the episode that we're going to be uh, viewing and playing through this week. So that's the game at a high level. I hope I've interested some people in, hey, what's going on here? I've talked about it in terms of what you might write for it, but you might have some other questions, either about the setting or gameplay or anything else. So if
There
anyone
was
does, I'd be happy to take them.
Yep, there was one question that came in, Mark, and I actually have one as well, but I'll read this first one that came in. Does the gameplay work best with playing the same character over different storylines, or is there a greater reward in swapping out your POV character between sessions?
Um, there, I have at this point, 6-year running campaign that is going forward from my early playtest days. So I've definitely have people who are sticking with characters. But at the same time, because the characters are so broad and pulpy, I've definitely know and have heard from a lot of people who use it as a one shot or who swap things out. Yeah, there's not a lot of progression built into the game system. The closest thing I have is if you want to, I've included a new mechanic on top of the Fate system called character arcs, where something that is your false belief, your trouble, is something that you can change over time, and that gives you a chance to sort of have a mechanical way of growing. But there isn't a sort of imperative where well, I have got my character up to level 5. It would be a shame to start over at level 1. It's definitely a game where you can come in with new people every week if you want.
Okay. And another question came in which mirrored mine, which is how can we write for you? Do we write a manuscript? And my question was how to contact you about this.
So feel free to send me an email at mark@festiveninja. Again, I don't take submissions, I take pitches, and I can give you a much broader sort of document around what would be involved. But basically, I'm publishing about one zine a year, so it's not a major sort of market, but it is something where I am looking for new and different voices to join. I think games are best as a chorus of different perspectives from people in different walks of life. So I'm definitely interested in hearing your pitch. It doesn't have to be anything involved. Typically, length is around 2 to 3,000 words. Again, it's just something you're setting up. But feel free to reach out to me either in the SFWA Discord or that way, and I'd be happy to talk about the SFWA Pro Rage and hear your idea. And then if it was something good, that really seemed to be something that scratched an itch we haven't done before, then I could talk about timelines based on the next thing that's coming up. The other thing, just so people know, I do in the zine also have published poetry and fiction. I'm not currently looking for them, but if someone has an essay that they may have written on a topic vaguely related to optimism or dystopian, or thinking about cosmopolitan issues or anything like that, I would be open to those types of pitches as well. I have, like I said, published those originally, and then also in terms of getting a little extra out of work that you may have done, if you've talked about or written about a topic like hope punk or optimism or space opera and a reprint, found money for you and new content for me. So be
Excellent.
interested in that as well.
Why don't you go ahead and put that email address into the chat here, and Misha should be able to get that transferred over to the people who are watching. But at this point, we will move on to the next presenter, which is Richard Ruane. He's one of the members of the game writing committee at SFWA, and he's going to be showing off some stuff today. So, Richard, why don't you take it away?
Hey, I'm Richard Ruane, and I am a member of the game writing committee at SFWA, which has been a fantastic chance to get to know so many different game writers from all three sort of game writing industries that we cover: video, tabletop board games, and tabletop RPGs. I am here today to talk to you about a couple of different two projects that I've in the works this particular year. One that came out in January, which is a re-release of my very first game, and I'm going to kind of pull that up if I can remember how to make. Here we go. And we're going to pull over here, and then I am going to see if I can get. Actually, this is great. This is great just as it is. And I'm not going to try to shut my whole computer down and go into slideshow mode. But Dark Designs and Verdigris was my first published standalone game. I started in game writing, working for the very first incarnation of White Wolf as an editor and occasional writer, back before it went through multiple different other incarnations, which was a very long time ago. And then moved on to do independent comics. And then in 2016 or so, came back to start doing some independent game writing as well. In 2018, I published this game for the first time with Gauntlet Codex. And I don't have that cover up right now, but it was illustrated by a fantastic comics creator named Minerva Fox. And the reprint was re-illustrated by the cover was from an amazing comics artist named Tess Fowler. And that is a segment from it right there. Both highlighting the role in the game of Langwidere, who in the Oz books is the Queen of a Thousand Faces. Verdigris is the underground city of Oz that everyone has moved to after the fall of the Emerald City, after a vast apocalypse. And since this is sort of a substitute for a reading, I initially thought I should read my best written game introduction I've ever done, which is Oz had a taste for queer folks. It found the wizard and brought him here, found Dorothy and brought her along too. You did not plan for Oz to take you, but then there were the cyclones, the angry mobs, gunfire, storms at sea, holes in the world you thought would bury you. And then you flew and you belonged to Oz. Your monochrome life was over for good. Now you live in Verdigris, the cavernous, sunless capital of Oz below. I should back up, sorry. But Ozma vanished, Dorothy fled, and Oz fell. The green and glistening ruins are all that remain of the Emerald City, and the lands surrounding it have become the waste. Now you live in Verdigris, the cavernous, sunless capital of Oz below. There is still life and magic here. Sometimes there's even a sad beauty. Ogres in pasteboard masks plot assignations over cheap cocoa wine. Lonely automatons sing to themselves as they pull wealthy residents in pedicabs. Amid the gaslit hothouses and goddess temples, a blue-clad refugee from the east buys 10 flowers to take to a would-be paramour with the head of a hawk. Under the humming electrical sun, northern merchants in violet-feathered scarves sell intoxicants to renegade Westerners in yellow vest. Beyond and below, tunnels reach out in all directions, and roving gangs and self-taught wizards stalk the wastelands above. Uh, I was really fortunate that in 2020, this was nominated for my very first nomination for IGD and Groundbreaker Award for Best Setting. Um, and so I wanted to sort of show you a little bit of how I sort of revealed the setting to people. There is not like a setting chapter in this book. Instead, it sort of comes alive through character creation. There are 4 questions that guide character creation, and 2 of them are up here to take a look at. But the other 2 are, what was your monochrome life before what you were you? Yeah. In your monochrome life before, what were you? Uh, then when you lived in Oz, what was your most colorful location? And when you came below, which boss of Verdigris did you work for? Uh, there are a lot of Oz Easter eggs for Oz fiction fans here. But the book is very much rooted in kind of late readaptations of Oz, and especially inspired by Shauna Maguire's Emeralds to Emeralds and Dust to Dust. Uh, and finally ends with whom did you rendezvous with discreetly? Is it a forbidden love or a secret friendship? Uh, as I said, this was my very first sort of entry back into creating games, or very best standalone game entry into recreating games. Um, and then have done several things before then, since then. And you can actually see several of those at that address right there, which I'll pop into our chat. If I can get right to the right window. But this year, and I'll post that up in a second, this year I started to work on Silver Age. Um, as a queer creator, I had always promised myself there are 2 topics I would not do in a history game or a real world based investigation game. One was I would never go through the 80s uh, and sort of try to deal with the trauma of the Reagan administration and AIDS, the dual traumas of those. And one was I would never go back to West Texas in an investigation setting. And I started a werewolf game with firm intents of setting it in rural New England. And before I knew it, I had found it in the midst of West Texas. I'm going to switch my screen over to that. It is called Silver Age, a game of heroic werewolves and the communities they nurture and protect. And this was sort of my attempt to sort of revisit and come to terms with my own life in the 80s in West Texas, uh, and into the 90s. Uh, it was very much inspired by some incredible work I had actually found and licensed from 2 Italian artists who had originally published these as illustrations for novels they had put together. Um, and I was able to relicense those. Um, and those were this is a game inspired by Into the Odd, which is a game that in my life as a distributor and working for a distributor and publisher of the games, Into the Odd has sort of taken over my entire year. As we got a distribution deal for the game Mythic Bastion Land, and Into the Odd based game, and then picked up several other Into the Odd games, and we went from filling a few hundred orders every month to fulfilling 1,000 orders in a month over the summer. So this was sort of underway already, and I found that the system that we were sort of basing this on was in the zeitgeist. Um, each of the characters is a normal human who is also a completely normal werewolf living in a tiny little town in West Texas. If you know West Texas well, the town they are living in is called Hattie, but it is based on the town of Bront, Texas, named for Charlotte Bronte, but of course mispronouncing her name. Each of the characters in the game are residents there, ranging in age from 18 to early 40s. And they have jobs that go from a juvenile delinquent to school teacher. Um, and to nurse, mechanic, all sorts of things that could have you could be doing in a small town in West Texas. Um, I promise people that when I run playtest, I'm not trying to distinguish with NPCs when I develop a West Texas accent. It's just once I start talking about West Texas, it just comes out. Uh, the stats for the game are sort of based around what I see as the fundamental notion of what a werewolf is in the setting. They're powered by ferocity, trickery, and love. Um, and I'm told that one of the things that gets people most excited about the system is that silver is not only a toxin, it is also an intoxicant and a source of power that fuels werewolf magic. Um, but I think the part I'm most proud of in this particular system is that each of the characters is really rooted in the setting itself. Um, So for the background of the seer, or for the character who is the seer, it's been a while since you got steady work. That's what brought you back home to Hattie last year. Your folks said if you stuck around, you'd get a job on one of the oil rigs, but the fields are running dry, and raw petroleum may yet burn the world down. You're not sure what's next. And the fun thing about a quick start is it's not been edited yet, so here I am live with 2 typos in the first paragraph. Um, but that is sort of the next sort of piece I'm working on right now is Silver Age. So and that is those I think those were the two I was going to show off. So
Excellent. The first question I have is when can we expect to see Silver Age?
Silver Age should be out in say February is my guess is when it will get to backers, and from there we'll get it out sort of in more general public. Uh, I was hoping to have it out by PAX Unplugged, but as with most things in life, that is not exactly what happened. So
Right.
I started work by White Wolf, and so I have a White Wolf history of making deadlines. So
Okay. There's a question that came in from the audience. What drew you to working in the world of Oz?
uh, it really sort of started with a solicitation for pitches around the theme of emeralds.
Mm,
Or Gauntlet Codex pitched an issue called Codex Emerald. I had done some work for Gauntlet Codex before, and so pitched them on a crossover between. I think the initial pitch was a crossover between Oz and some Lovecraftian monstrosities lurking below, and it became sort of a game of post-apocalyptic Oz. So
okay. We don't have any other questions coming in. We can move on to, oh, never mind. We have another question. What has surprised you most in the early playtesting for Silver Age? Did you have to make significant modifications to achieve the current level of nuance for werewolf forms and other key character positions?
I think what surprised me most is because I kind of come from a world where or I come from a design world where people are kind of always asking for sort of anti-canonical details, like enough detail about where you start and what's going on right now. And I really wanted to avoid going down sort of the 90s RPG road of having hundreds of pages of backstory about how we got to where we are now, with a degree of certainty about who we are, which also accompanies with every character having an intense level of certainty about who they are and where they fit into the universe and who the real gods are. So I wanted to avoid, yes, that dangerous black hole of historical lore. Um, but what I found was that players kept asking me for it. And so I think one of the things we're going to do in the final version of the game is instead of sort of giving like a fixed set of details, is ask people where they believe they came from. What do they think that being a werewolf means? And why do they think they've become a werewolf? Because I think one of the things I wanted to do is not have a fixed set of absolute rules about how you became a werewolf. You know that it didn't come from somebody biting you, but you don't really know exactly what it was that set you apart. So.
Okay. I think on that note, we'll move on. Oh, wait, one more question has come in. How has working with White Wolf influenced your design of Silver Age? How much are we trying to steer away from Werewolf the Apocalypse? Good
Uh,
question.
yeah, I really wanted, because I think one of the things that White Wolf started to do beautifully, but then sort of kept steering away from. They kept trying to pull you into great global concerns, and you always started in this very concrete place in White Wolf because you were starting in the 90s. You were starting in New Orleans or Chicago or a space that actually existed. But then you quickly went on to like trying to save the cosmos. And I really wanted Silver Age to stick with you are trying to be the werewolf pack that protects the little town of Hattie. So
Okay. We're gonna change gears now. This constellation is the games and comics, and we're very happy to have Madeleine Holly-Rosing with us to share some of her recent work in the comics realm. So, Madeleine, why don't you go ahead and take over?
Sure. My name's Madeleine Holly-Rosing. I'm a member of the comics committee here at SFWA, and I'm also the writer creator of the steampunk supernatural graphic novel, prose and audio drama series, Boston Metaphysical Society, and my new medieval adventure, Morgana Pendragon. For those who, it's Boston Metaphysical is probably one of the longest running comics on Kickstarter. We had our first campaign, I think, back in 2013. So yeah, we've been there for a while. And for those who aren't familiar with it, and I'll start with Boston Metaphysical. It's about an ex-Pinkerton detective, a spirit photographer, and a genius scientist who battles supernatural forces in late 1800s Boston. And if Misha wants to start pulling up the some of the art, that would be great. I don't know where he went.
I'm here just waiting for your permission, and we're
Okay,
gonna
there you
start now.
go. Please. We'll pull up the first one. I think I put them in order, hopefully. Cross my fingers here.
Sorry, one sec, that's on me.
Okay, no problem.
There we go.
Here we go. This is the cover of our volume 1, which includes our original 6-issue mini-series. The cover is by the artist Rebecca Isaacs. And here you see our original team of ex-Pinkerton detective, spirit photographer, and genius scientist. Yeah, go ahead to the next page, please. And I want to show you some of the art. The art for our original 6-issue miniseries was done by Emily Hugh. And Misha, go ahead.
I did, and it's being mean.
It's being mean.
There we go.
There we go. Yeah, the art for the original 6-issue miniseries is done by Emily Hugh. I did have various colorists on it. You can go ahead to the next page. And I just want to give you guys a flavor. And you can go ahead on the next. And then this is the cover for what became volume 2, our special edition. I then decided to, instead of doing a 6-issue miniseries, to do 4 standalone sequels, which are all included in volume 2. Brought a new artist on board. And the cover artist for volume 2 is Claudia Annunziello. You can go ahead and show us. Yeah, these are the 4 standalone sequels, which were published individually by myself and by SourcePoint Press. And so those stories are all included, plus a bunch of bonus material in volume 2. And you can go ahead to the next page and we can show off some of the fabulous art by Gwen Tavares. She did the art and the coloring. What I wanted to do with the one-shots, these were longer stories and roughly like 30 or a little more than 30 pages long. was it enabled me to focus more on, you know, one or two characters other than the entire ensemble, which the series took care of. You can go ahead to the next one. And yeah, this is set in an alternate universe of the United States, which I actually call the Great States of America, where great houses rule America, and it's primarily a parliamentary oligarchy that we live under. And then, yeah, this is my third series, was Mystery at Pikes Peak. This is one of the variant covers by Rio Burton. They go through lots of adventures in the 4 standalones, and basically at the end of the 4th one, they need to get the hell out of Dodge and leave Boston, and are off to Colorado Springs, Colorado, to Tesla's experimental station, because, well, Tesla kind of owes them. Yeah, in the original 6-issue miniseries, Bell, Edison, Tesla, and Houdini are integral to the story. Then they go away for a while, and then I bring Tesla back. Brought a new artist on board, and oh yeah, I'll show you the covers. These are great. This is by Angela Wu for issue number 2. And that's issue 3, which we're actually going to be fulfilling issue 3 and 4 early in January. I'm expecting those in any day now. Yeah, Angela's just fantastic. And this art is by Elizabeth McKenza, who did issues 1 and 2. And I'm trying to remember if I put up any of Danny's art. Danny Rivera took over for issues 3 and 4. But I love both their works, and it was a lot of fun working with both of them. And yeah, Elizabeth did a great job of like capturing the West, the Old West. And I also have written prose. Storm of Secrets is a novel that is a prequel to the graphic novel series. It starts about 5 years before volume 1. Covers by Louisa Pressler. The next cover you'll see is an anthology. It's like 7 stories. That's also a prequel. I decided a while back that all of the stories that are come before volume 1 of the graphic novel will be in prose, and everything after will be in graphic novel format. And the reason I did that was budget. It's very expensive to produce a comic, and it also takes a while. So it's also fun to do the prose. And these are mostly origin stories. And then we really had fun. We did a coloring book. Alejandro Lee was the artist on that. I actually recently got a photo of the coloring book in China. Someone just held it up like, look, in China. And I was like, I have no idea how it got there, but it did. And then we also did an audio drama during COVID when there was no conventions. I was fortunate enough to have, a good friend, and her husband had been doing audio drama for years, and they came on as my production team. So I wrote and produced The Ghost Ship, which takes place roughly during the time of volume 1. And yes, you can either buy it from me in flash drive or CD, but it is available for download on Spotify or Captivate, or whatever platform you like. It is a full cast, special effects, like your old-time radio play. So yeah, I can move on to the next one. And this is my new series, Morgana Pendragon. That was on Kickstarter earlier this year. We fulfilled it in September. Rio Burton, I brought her. I love Rio, as you can tell. I hire Rio, and I tend to rehire a lot of folks because they really capture the work I want to do. And I have a new artist on board, Alden Kay. And for those of you who don't know the story, it's 20 years after Morgana has left England. She has been working as a mercenary with her team until she receives a message that her brother King Arthur is dying. She returns to England to assassination attempts, political anarchy, and a son she hasn't seen in 20 years, Mordred, all with no magic. So it's a very, I had never seen a comic. There's very few comics with middle-aged women, particularly with their own agency. So I decided it was time. And we've never really seen Morgana at this age. So I thought that would be fun. You go ahead, Misha can show some of Alden's. Oh, yeah, this is our variant cover by Roberta in Granada. I love Roberta too. Coloring by Valentina Pinto. And you can see the fabulous work that Alden is doing. For the first 3 pages of issue 1. And by the way, issue 2 will be on Kickstarter in February. The art is done and it's in pre-press right now. And this is the main cover for Morgana number 2. You guys are actually the first to see this. I have not been sharing this, so this is a first. So yeah, this is our main cover. And then the next one is our variant cover by Claudia Nunciello. So you guys are very special. No one else has seen this. And I think that might be it. I'm not sure. Did I put more?
That's it.
That's it. Okay. Trying to think what else. Oh, and I'm on top of all this, I'm currently writing a story for Lady Mechanica.
Very nice.
So, and I moved like 2 months ago. So
gosh.
can my life be any more?
It always seems to happen all at once.
Yes.
We have a few questions that have come in.
Okay.
With such a long-running campaign, I imagine the team for lettering and art has cycled a bit over the years. This was early on in some of the earlier stuff that you were showing. How has that process of team transition been for you in the course of this project? And how do you balance stylistic consistency with creating room for fresh visual directions over the years?
Well, number one, I've had the same letterer for the past 12 years, Troy Pateri. I'm loath to go to anybody else because many years ago when all I had was a script and a friend of us introduced us, and he's a journeyman letterer. He works for DC. He's amazing. Glanced through my script and said, yeah, I'll do this. And he's been with me ever since. So there's been no transition there. As far as the artists, I go through a lot of portfolios, and I mean a lot. And I have in the past, all of the artists for Boston Metaphysical have been women, and it's been my intent to keep it that way. I hope to. Unfortunately, the ones I want to hire are often booked out for years, so that's a problem. But I look at the art, I look at portfolios and see if any hint of if they could capture what Boston Metaphysical is in their work. And apparently I'm pretty good at that because I have managed consistency, even though the styles are different. You're in this world, who these characters are, and it's Boston Metaphysical. So it's production decisions on mine and going through, so many portfolios that my eyes begin to bleed. But yeah, and just trying to visualize where I think, these artists can go with it. And so far, so good. So I guess I must have a knack for it.
Mark, one of our other panelists said the art is great. What are the types of things that you share in creative direction?
I supply images for the artists. Particularly if they're a new artist, I describe in detail in the script. I provide references, I provide links. And then we also have conversations. We do character sketches. And if there's any changes or anything that need to be done, I try to learn how the artist likes to work so I can best help them do their job, to the best of their ability. And part of it is just like, plus my fingers over the past half the time.
All right. One more question from Nkasa. What advice do you have for someone who would like to start their own graphic novel?
Well, don't do what I did. My advice, I started with a 6-issue miniseries and I just dove right in. I also had, I was fortunate to have some excellent mentors. So those original 6 issues were up to professional quality. But my advice would be to start small. If you're a writer artist, do like a 4 to 8 page story. Try to get it into anthologies. Talk to people on social media who are looking for submissions, and see if they supply you with an artist or if you need to bring an artist with you. But yeah, I would say start small and learn the craft. And this also gets your name out and you get to work with different artists and see who fits the bill for your own bigger story that you want to do later. And this also establishes relationships so that you can actually find someone. The comics world, like any place else, it's relationship based, and people need to know who you are, and that one, you pay them on time. You're not difficult to work with. I'm sure the games community is the same way. So it's a pleasant environment for everyone. But yeah, I would say start small. If you're a writer, start getting into, comic artist / writer groups and look for anthologies to submit to. And then a lot of times they'll supply the artist for you. And if they don't, then, you may have to pay someone to bring them on board, which is why I also suggest start saving money to pay your artist for a reasonable budget, and don't just think that you can slap something up on Kickstarter and expect it to go. I mean, I've run 16 campaigns. I've written a book on it. I used to do consulting. It's a second full-time job. So you need to do your research on that as well, if that's in your, if you think that's going to be in your future.
Okay. Well, thank you, Madeleine.
Thank you.
We're going to switch back to games now, and I'm going to hand it over to Kij Johnson, and she will introduce what she's been working on.
Hi, everybody. Yes, I am Kij Johnson. I actually have been working on a number of games the last year or two. A whole bunch of them are either not out yet, or they're for IPs that I don't really have permission to talk about. None of them are giant exotic ones, but it's exciting to be at the very beginning level of certain things. But what I decided I wanted to talk about today would be my tabletop role-playing game RiverBank, which I wrote last year, and it came out. I got my copy 2 weeks ago, so I'm unbelievably excited. Oh, it's a book. It's a book. It's hard not to love that moment. This was actually, in a lot of ways, the intersection of everything I love most in this world. So I got to play with animals. I always love writing about animals. It's very much historical. It's also a game. I'll talk about that in a minute. But it also gave me a chance to for pretty language, because I love writing. I love voice. And I thought I also would read the first paragraph of my book, because I felt like it established exactly what I was trying to do. You wake up from the strangest dream and find yourself just where you should be, rocking in the striped hammock under the willow tree down by the river. The afternoon is perfect, the sort of sunny day only England in June can offer. Clouds like fat, amiable sheep strolling across the brilliant sky, their shadows moving in procession across the fields, the woodlands, and the lanes. The river throws sparkling sunlight up from its little waves. Two of your neighbors have just passed, rowing upstream, perhaps to tea with friends, perhaps on an adventure. Things have been quite amazingly busy. How can there be so much going on all the time? But after luncheon, you decided your afternoon would be best spent lazing by the river. You hung your hammock and carried out a little round table from your cottage, piling it with everything you might need: lemonade in a jug, a plate of biscuits draped with doilies to keep insects away, extra tumblers and napkins should any friends wander by, an exciting novel in case they don't, and a notebook and pencil for any brilliant ideas you might have. But instead, you fell asleep under the rustling leaves and had a most peculiar dream where everything was loud and busy and a little tedious, and you were some sort of human. Well, it's over now, and you're awake in your right time and place, the best of all possible animals in the best of all possible worlds. Welcome home. So this isn't a typical opening, but this isn't a typical game at all. RiverBank was, it's a one-person design, basically. I'm going to show you a bunch of art that's gorgeous. Misha, would you put up the cover, which was the first image right now? This was something that I did all the writing and the game design myself, and then Cobalt published it. I found artists to be technical, but they're the ones who produced it, and they're the ones who did the backer kit and things. So it's a cottagecore role-playing game designed for adults, and it's inspired by literature. So Wind in the Willows and its proteges, including, and this was the reason why this book was even possible, my novel, The RiverBank, which came out in 2016. Beatrix Potter, Frog and Toad, I brought visual aids. But also light fiction of the late Victorian and Edwardian eras, although with some chronological slippage, because, for instance, I used P.G. Wodehouse and especially the Jeeves stories as a big inspiration. The flavor was meant to be, while it is cozy core, it is meant to be charming rather than sweet. So a little on the sharper side, more like lemon drops and less like sugar cookies. Misha, you could drop the image now. So in this game, you play a civilized, anthropomorphized animal character in an idealized countryside that resembles post-Edwardian England. This is in England where humans and capital A animals coexist and always have alongside ordinary animals, so that you can have a capital A like chicken. Well, you don't have chickens in this game for reasons, but a capital A duck or a little d duck, and one of them like quacks and eats water weeds, and the other one wears cute spats and recites poetry. The setting is historically precise, sort of. It's very, very anchored in basically the summer of 2013. So trains, motor cars, Victrola photographs are a thing. Photography turns out to be quite a subject. George V is the King of England. He is a human. And town is London, and it has everything, including the British Museum, zoos, and private clubs. So as you create a character, you choose from several dozen sorts of animals you can be. Misha, could you put the first number 2 up now? So you can be a bat. And in this case, this was our, that actually is super cute, but that. Okay, so she is, you can be a bat. You can be any of a number of varieties of bats. This particular bat is singing Christmas carols and is very active. Could you put number 3 up, which is the next one? This newt, you can be a newt, or in fact, amphibians, there are 2 amphibians native to England at this time. So you can be a newt or a lizard. In this case, this is a newt, and actually there's long stories which are not necessary to know about why certain things are identified or misidentified. But in this case, this very dapper newt has a pet beetle, because you can have beetles become, or insects, pets, become randomizers in the story. Could you put the next one up? And here was a lovely sketch of a goose to represent the waterfowl category, out for votes for women. I sent enormous amounts of photograph to get all of these things right. Incidentally, I loved these artists. I was really lucky. Sven Jamocha is the single figure artist who I found on DeviantArt. The big ones, if you want to pop the next one up, Misha, the big ones are by Kathleen Jennings, who's well known in our own community. She had done the cover for the original Waterbank and RiverBank and many, many interiors. This is actually London, and this is a human club next to a animal club, as a group of foxes, one of whom has brought a guest, are going into it. So thanks. And then I had a wonderful map maker too, Damian Mamaliti. Misha, could you put that one up? This is Giant. The reason why I'm showing its map, not only because it is truly awesome, but also because this is a game where you are very much anchored in a time and a place. Everything that's happening, instead of being an adventurer going to new places and doing new things, you are in the same place you usually are. And the adventures are the kinds of things that come to you in a chaotic world, as indeed, if you were an animal in Edwardian Britain or post-Edwardian Britain, things might be. So, and you can take that down, Misha, thank you. So what was I doing with RiverBank? I had the idea and I pitched it basically as a joke to a publisher who said, that sounds fascinating. And then I found myself writing something that was the most fun I've ever had with writing. Role-playing games are not really a departure for me. I was a gamer before I wrote. My very first con was a military miniatures convention in Minneapolis. And I, at one point, worked at Wizards of the Coast and then TSR. And then I started doing all this writing for indie RPGs that aren't out yet. I only started writing fiction at 24 or so. So the last few years, however, I never stopped asking questions about how fiction works. And the last few years, I've gotten really interested in how narrative works, which is reflected in my writing, my fiction, as well as this game. And specific questions that I keep asking are, how many of the usual elements that we think of as essential to fiction, like character, friction, conflicts, etc., how much of it can you eliminate and still create something that is moving and recognizably a story? So I've been, as a writer, playing around with experimental forms, odd voices. This is actually a big part of my interest in historical writers, because they break rules that we think are automatic. And it obviously leads me to thinking about how narrative works in non-stories, and especially games. So in a conventional role-playing game, usually they're heroic characters, sometimes they're anti-heroic. They have specialized roles, they have specialized skills, they're pursuing some kind of goal advancement in an environment that is probably not strictly our world. So the stakes are usually high, the goal is often explicit, we have to kill the Goblin King. Often there are side quests. So a conventional RPG has a whole bunch of built-in expectations about what kind of story it is. Every time I talked about this story to people who are deep into gaming, they would always say, how is it relating to 5th edition? And I'd say, it kind of isn't. This kind of storytelling will automatically lead people to quest structure, and even things like space opera and weird fiction or weird horror games tend to be quest driven in the same ways that like heroic fiction or heroic fantasies are, even though the genres themselves, the literary genres, are not necessarily quest driven. It also makes a lot of sense for the GM because a quest gives you an automatic structure that you can then allow people to explore their characters. You know what the goals are. It builds a story arc automatically. It keeps things moving. But because I was thinking a lot about narrative forms, I got to thinking about the other narrative structures, things that weren't quests. And this could have gone a lot of directions, but where it went for me was actually farce structure. Which I think is really underexplored in fiction. In farce, typically things start with small stakes that may not even be the final stakes, but they're given a sort of disproportionate importance, and things get complicated because of usually misunderstandings, characters overreact, and then weird coincidences, things that we don't get away with in mainstream science fiction or fantasy. We don't get away with just like 7,000 random coincidences. And yet you watch the delightful clockwork of a P.G. Wodehouse story and you realize actually coincidence is playing the majority function in how the story built. So these misunderstandings, these overreactions, these coincidences, these things sort of compile and get worse and worse and crazier until we get to a moment that things start to sort out. Things fall off to the sides. Coincidences start to resolve problems. And then you end up with usually some kind of resolution, which is not the resolution the characters thought. And then that is the end of the story. Even if a story that is farce driven has a quest, which sitcoms often do. Sitcoms are a classic example of farce structure, especially classic sitcoms. The quest structure actually is dominated by the farce elements. So this is a lot of cerebral thinking that really I did all this thinking, but honestly, I was just like writing and having a great time. The problem with a farce-driven game is that it has to look like it's descending into absolute chaos, but it can't actually descend into chaos. And so I had to design a mechanic where that was viable, where you could control chaos. And that gave me moved me in some directions where, and actually, I think I'm going to just skip a bit of this because what I needed was a system that propagated chaos, but gave us ways to keep it under control and to create moments for chaos and ways chaos would appear, multiple ways for chaos to appear. And then I just sort of, and so the mechanic, but it also had to be a sort of consistent mechanic. And so the mechanic is called haphazardry, as in the word haphazard. And haphazardry is basically this cluster of ways that the game doesn't work the way you would expect. For instance, the basic structure of the game master's notes is not very functional. Or rather, it's not classically structured. Instead of what you would see in a 5th edition game where you would have, here's some descriptions of places, here's a bunch of history, and the reason why this is going to matter, here's a bunch of characters. You do have all of these elements, but in this situation, almost everybody who you're going to run into as a non-player character is somebody you know. They are your neighbors. They are your crazy, eccentric, annoying neighbors. In some ways, the two comedies, the two sitcoms, Seinfeld and Friends, are, even though I hate Seinfeld, they are actually sort of models for how this works. You know most of the characters. Sometimes there's a guest character, but mostly it just goes, these wild people get themselves into trouble, everything escalates way out of proportion, and then they have to try to find ways to sort of get it back to the status quo. Misha, could you skip ahead a little to image 10, which is the aged relative? So there are all these randomizers that are built into this game. And it's, yeah, I think there we go. So there are all these things that are part of your life as an animal in this world. One of them is that your stats are not the normal stats. But one of them is that everybody has an aged relative. And the aged relative has certain powers over you. They can They are the worst kind of foe you will ever meet. Nothing is worse than your aged relative. And the worst thing that could happen to you in this game is that your aged relative could decide that they need you to take them to the spas of Germany. So you won't be back for months and you'll miss Christmas with your friends. So aged relatives are one of these things. There's something called the between times, which are randomizers that happen before the game starts, where everybody, it might be things like, they're just ways that the world has changed. The setting and the characters around you have changed that are going to change how a given session plays. So the weather was terrible, and so everybody's been grouchy, or one of you has a head cold, and that's just going to make you really bad at talking to people because your nose is going to be running. Your aged relative might visit you. Also, things like how the character stats are used, how you perform a deed, the fact that if you perform a deed and fail, there are side effects for people who are experienced players. That means every time you fail, there is a real chance it's a critical failure, no matter what you rolled, because that's just what happens when you fail in comedy. There are consequences that generate more chaos. There are ways that you can convert these failures into success, but they come with different chaos generators as well. And finally, there is something called the animality poetry range, where it's not unrealistic for you in the course of a session, in the course of a day spent trying desperately to get a cordial that your great aunt has told you she needs, but she can't tell you where it is in her house, and she also locked her house. How you're in the course of the adventure where you are trying to get that out to her, you could easily end up finding yourself driven into absolute animality or poetry, which are states where you are effectively useless to your friends. You may be a capital F frog wearing a very dapper outfit, but in absolute animality, you strip out of your clothes, you seat yourself carefully in a puddle, and you start to enunciate, ribbit, yes, ribbit. And on the absolute poetry side, you just get sort of caught up in the beauty and itness of everything, which was a hat tip to Wind in the Willows, where there are chapters of just deep lyrical beauty. And I wanted that to be available as a playing piece in this game as well. So these are all controlled chaos. These are chaos that there's also something called haphazardry, where basically every half hour a timer goes off and something goes wrong. But the GM is given a structure into which all of these things can operate, such that each session will develop a clear arc, a clear development. Each session will end with some kind of satisfying resolution, though it may not be the resolution of the initial goal, because everything starts with a sort of catalyst, which sometimes is a goal and sometimes is just a circumstance that randomizes things. So I think I'm going to stop there. There's so much, and you can take down my lovely aged relative. I think she's so excellent, but I thought I would stop there. It's so hard for me to know how to talk about this I gave you a lot of sort of theoretical ramifications of it, but in fact, what it really was me just writing every funny thing I could think. The narrator of this, the foregrounded narrator, is actually somebody who extensively footnotes, and her footnotes range from actual content, like the fact that, surprise, there weren't really tractors in 1913 in England. That is a funny story all its own, and the narrator tells you that. But also, she just kind of goes off on tangents sometimes. So her footnotes are I loved writing them. The entire project was interesting because I did all of the writing and designing in a vacuum, and then essentially handed it over. They play tested it after I'd been play testing it, and they said, "Oh yeah, we love it. We're good." And then they asked me to write a second one. And so I'm writing another haphazardry based game for them, but we're still in the contract stage on that. But I know it's going to be called Bugwick. And I know it's going to be much more conventionally fantasy, but it's still going to engage heavily with chaos. So I see it as sort of a cross between cruise season in Skagway, Alaska, and conventional Dungeons and Dragons. And I'm excited. I'm very excited to be writing it. So every day is a good day, which I hardly ever said about fiction. I'm sad to say. So does anybody have questions or anything?
Yeah, there are a number of questions. That all sounds amazing, and I can't wait to see the Skagway one. It's
It's going to be so much fun.
The first question might be the most important question of all. It's tell us about the chickens.
Okay, so the reason why there are no chickens, for somebody who is a little on the obsessive side, designing a game for yourself from the ground up, you really go down rabbit holes. So the reason why no chickens is because in this world, capital A animals are not domesticated. They do not derive from domesticated animals. So geese and ducks get in, even though they were domesticated, because Canada geese were present in England in 1913. Sadly, ravens do not get in because ravens were not in Southwestern England in 1913. So this thing is, honestly, I really love history. And there are moments that I was like, Kij, just lie down, drink a cool drink, stop worrying about it. But yeah, but no chickens is because of that, because they're domesticated. They were only domesticated in England. Also no capital D dogs or capital C cats, but then I give you ways that I show you how you can make your own.
All right. I think you might have answered this one. How did this get this project underway? Did you pitch it to a publisher first? I think you had worked on it and then pitched to
No. Well, so I had started editing role-playing games. I was the editor for the Mystery Flesh Pit National Park game, and ended up doing some editing for Wolf Bauer at Cobalt Press on The Labyrinth. I was the lead editor for that. And in the course of that, he and I were chatting one day, and I was like, oh, I have this idea, because I'd already started to think through these mechanics a bit, because it's hard to edit a game without starting to think about how games work. And because I'm already a structuralist as a writer, I just got really interested. So I pitched it, and he said, it was a little like watching Game Changer, Ho Ho Hollywood, where it's like, okay, good idea, write me a paragraph. I wrote him a paragraph. He's like, good, write me 10 pages. I wrote him 10 pages. He's like, I'm buying it. So it was quite a surprise. I didn't expect it, but I was ready. I feel like I've been training for this my whole life.
And next question, what games were touch points for RiverBank?
Interestingly, A Quiet Year was one of them. I looked at a lot of games. A Quiet Year, what I loved about it was the ways it used cards to build the world, such that then the characters interact within the world. So I found that fascinating. I also, weirdly enough, found the My Little Pony role-playing game to be really instructional, because one of the goals for this game is that it's meant to be rules light, which it actually is, and it's meant to be friendly to people who don't want to play 5th edition. So it's cozy core. It's meant to be a different crowd. And so I spent a lot of time looking at the My Little Pony role-playing game, because they did such a good job of explaining what they were doing. And that's where I got the idea of this foregrounded narrator, because Pinkie Pie explains everything about the role-playing game for you in the My Little Pony one. Apart from that, and most of my books I've put away now, I did look at a lot of others. But because I knew that what I was doing it had more in common with sort of tea time adventures than probably most other things. And yet it was utterly different, because it was driven by chaos and history instead of being driven by the cozy aspects. So different ones. But I also, I had done a bunch of cipher reading before that because Mystery Flesh Pit had been a cipher game. So I was thinking some about how Cipher manages, building its characters and stuff. But really, it was 25 years of thinking about how games work and how structure works, and me saying, what happens if I break it? What happens if I try to do something really different? And so that's what I was trying.
All right. Mark asks, what challenges did you find in adapting cottagecore to a game? Did you have a clear idea for the gameplay?
So much of what that theoretical stuff was me attempting to make sense, because one of the issues with cottagecore, and I like cottagecore as a concept, but I actually don't find it super interesting to play in many iterations because one thing characters always need, readers always need, players always need, is a sense of what the stakes are. And they don't have to be much, but there has to be something that people think it is worth caring about. And cottagecore was the games that I played. So I tried various versions of various cottagecore games, and I would enjoy them. And I would say, okay, so I can understand that this would be fun. It's essentially make believe with my friends, but I kind of would like something to happen that challenges me as a player, but especially as a GM. Because I think, honestly, the next game I'm designing so it can be played without a GM. So Bugwick will be GM-less if you want it to be. But this game actually adapted very well to being GM-less. But it has to, that was my biggest issue, is that Cozy Core is meant to be reassuring, pleasant. I mean, and these are all sweeping generalizations. It's meant to be a positive and affirming experience. And there are a lot of ways we can have those. But one of the ways we can have those is playfulness, big P playfulness. Fun adventures, going swinging is actually kind of a dangerous activity over a certain age, and yet it's super fun. So I wanted to play a game that was the equivalent of swinging in the big swing at the age of 60. And so that's kind of what I was aiming at.
Okay. I think that's our last question. So if there aren't any more that show up, we can move on. Thank you very much, Kij. It looks amazing. It sounds great. I can't wait to play it. The last presentation we have is from me. I am presenting Storyfold Wildwoods. Here, I've got the book here. This is a solo board game where you play through a 5-chapter story, a scene at a time, using cards and dice and a little bit of luck here and there. I have to say from the outset, I am not the writer on this. I was brought on as the editor to edit the story text. I've worked a number of times in stories and games, putting story bits onto cards, and that's where a lot of this resides in this game. And so they brought me in to help keep the story concise but still moving. The story was written by Sjoerd van der Linde, a game designer and writer from the Netherlands. It is an absolute, I can say this because I'm not the creator of the story, a wonderful story. And it's so very different. It has that very Northern European feel. It's a very dark story. It's a dark fairy tale. And the best way to kind of start you off here is and show you a little bit of how this game works is you get this booklet, right? And you open it up and it says many moons ago. And you open that up and it says in a world of light and shadow. And then you open that up. There was a girl named Luma. And as you can see, this is the game board. And then when you open it up further, you get the story. It starts off with a prologue, which is basically a tutorial. I have a video that we'll show in a moment that is from chapter 1, but what I want to do is I'll read the text that comes out that you get at chapter 1, and also then tells you how to set up the chapter. And I'll read this to kind of set up the story. Into the dark, Luna sat on the bank of the river and rested her head against Brahm's reassuring leg. Brahm is her pet, not pet, her companion bear. She smiled as the Waldbark happily dug up some thick roots from the sodden soil. Her light had cleansed the crimson shadows from the creature, but the act had drained her spirit. Every time she used the light, Luma drew closer to the brink, and she worried she might lose herself to the shadow. It made her feel frightened and abandoned, just like when the Nachtmare came to visit her in the dead of night. In her heart, Luma understood that if the shadows continued to spread, it would just be the forest it wouldn't be just be the forest that suffered. Everything she loved would be in danger. The creature she cared for, her home at the river's edge, even Brahm. The old bear heaved his body forward with a deflated sigh and nudged Luma gently. As his warmth reached her, Luma's dark thoughts began to subside, and a sense of calm returned to her heart. I'm ready, Brahm, Luma said, meeting his eyes. The bear peered at the looming forest and then back at Luma. He nodded, as he always did when she shared her visions and fears with him. With Brahm by her side and a new-found light growing inside her, Luma gathered her courage and marched toward the unknown. Something, or someone, called her to heal the forest. She must be ready to face whatever shadows awaited. But with each step, the weight of responsibility grew heavier, and her nerves started to get the better of her again. Luma held on to Brahm tighter and tighter with each passing step as her old doubts returned. If I fail, everything will be lost. From there, you go on to play the first scene in the first chapter, and we can run the video now, Misha, and you'll see how the game plays and how the story unfolds in the scenes. And do we have audio, Misha?
It didn't have audio in the one that downloaded.
It didn't?
No.
Oh, well, I guess I will narrate. So I'm reading the scene here at the moment. I must have had, I swear I tricked it. So I'm reading the scene and I've set up everything, and you can see there's tokens. There's a token on the left side, that's your spirit tracker. There's tokens in the middle here. One is the light tracker, one is the shadow tracker. These other tokens on the right side are how you mark things. And then the cards at the bottom, this is the main gameplay. There's a 3, 4, 5, and 6 slot, and those are your 4 actions that you can take. And to take an action, you have to roll dice and get a number of successes. You have to get that to finish something. A lot of times it's 1 or 2, sometimes it's 3. You can see on the actions on the board there's a 2 action and a 3 action and another 2 action. So you have to roll 3 dice and get at least 2 threes, let's say, if you're doing a 3+ card. And then after you do an action, that action moves to the end of what they call the river. Everything else moves up. You can also see there are a couple of monsters, creatures at the end of the river. They will attack during the shadow phase. And it goes back and forth. It's a Luma phase. She does things with as many dice as she has available. You can assign those dice as you want. Choose a card to play, assign the dice, roll them, get the result, move those dice over to the used dice area, move the action over and clean up the river, and then decide what you want to do next with the dice you have left. As you play through the game, you will get a couple more dice and larger dice. Yeah, it's unfortunate the audio wasn't on this. To finish a scene, you can see there's these 2 actions that are kind of purple hemispheres at the top with a line through them. So you have to move through the scene. So you have to do the one on the left first and do the one on the right later. The other actions are yellow, and those are optional, and they usually give you a card or something, but you don't have to do them. And then you also, to win the scene, you have to take that light marker, which is the yellow one down on that row at the bottom, and get it to the center before the shadow marker, which is over on the right side, gets to the center. The shadow marker will move over one space after the creatures have their turn, after every Luma turn. Luma turn, then the shadow turn, the shadow marker moves over. So you basically have 4 turns to get through the scene and light the scene. If you do, you Luma will succeed, and you move on with the Luma succeeds text. If you don't, then the shadow succeeds. You still move on through the story, but you may have to add a shadow card to your deck. It adds cards in depending on how good or bad you do in a scene. You always move on to the next scene so you can move your way through the story. And so I play through the rest of this, and I'll give you the spoilers. I barely make it out of the scene by taking all 5 dice after I've gone across the scene, and I have 1 turn left, and I decide, well, I'm going to try to light the scene in one go, and I have to move that token 5 spots over, and it was on, I think, the 3 at the time, the light card, and I got 5 successes, and I didn't fudge it. I decided I was just going to play this straight. I didn't fudge it. I got the 5, and so that would move me on to the next scene. When you move on to the next scene, the page flips up. You take the tokens off the page that you put on. The page flips up. You read a new scene. You read a new setup. You may have to add some creatures again. And then the other thing to know is that these, you can see the shadow cards over here on the left side of the scene. There are 3 shadow cards, and in the setup you played 1, which was the fear card. That left 2 shadow cards. If you ever play the last shadow card, the shadow wins that scene. So there are different ways for you to basically lose the scene, even though you still move on, but it will mean the story gets darker for Luma as she moves forward. And the story is, Luma has realized that there is something tainting the animals in the forest. She's got to go figure it out. She keeps getting these visions through the story, and the visions become more and more important as you move through the story. And it's a big part of the plot point, so I won't say any more than that. But as you can see, it's a random board game story that you get to play through, and you can play through it multiple times. Because if you do well, you'll go down one path. If you don't do as well, you'll go down another path. And then there are cards in a special pack that you can break out after you play it the first time, that you can add in, that will make the game different or a little harder the next time you play. There was one reviewer online who said she'd already played through it 3 times with some of these different cards. And the game had only been out for about a month at that point, so she really got into it. But yeah, the gameplay is fairly simple. As you can see, you've got 4 different abilities, and each of those abilities has 2 things that you can do. So like the light will light up a creature and stun it. You can use your light to stun a creature, or you can use your light to light the scene. But it's a lot of management of where those are, because obviously when a card is on the 6, you've got to get a success roll is a 6 or better on an 8-sided die. And like I say, later in the story, you will get a 10-sided die and a 12-sided die. But getting an 8 on or a 6 on an 8-sided die is pretty tough. And if you have to get 2 or 3 of those, very tough. So it's a lot of manipulation of trying to move things down the river so that you can do easier things, but also managing your time, because as you can see at this point in the video, the shadow's already moved down 2 spots. On the next turn, I forget to move it down 1 more. So it ends up pretty much 1 away from the center by the time I light the scene. It's a gorgeous game. The designer, the designer, graphic designer, the illustrator was Justine Chalumeau. She did an amazing job. Open Owl is a studio that I've worked for a few times, and they love beautiful games. They love games with story. I highly recommend if you like board games that are heavily into story and gorgeously produced, that you check out the games that they have put out. We could probably go ahead and stop this now because without the audio, we're really not getting a whole lot out of it. But thank you, Misha. I must have messed that up when I sent it to you. Uh, let's see if there's some questions. Okay. That's a good question. What are the general principles guiding editing for a game? Is there more work to be done with gameplay flowchart, coherence, for instance, and sentence level technical detail? On this project, for me, it was more sentence level. It was a little bit of developmental editing in the fact that Stuart's first language isn't English, although, being a European, his English was amazing. But just tightening it up, making the prose sing a little better and fit. I think the cards we had maybe 80 words, maybe 60 words on some that had a lot more gameplay on them. The scenes themselves had some more space, but still wasn't unlimited because you also had the gameplay stuff on that and the artwork. Obviously, artwork very important. I have worked on games where I've been writing, and that flow that flow chart is hugely important. I'm working on another game with OpenL right now where I am doing a lot of the writing. It's up back there called Threshold. And yeah, that's all we're talking about at the moment because we're still pretty early is the flow of the story. Okay, so develop a game like this. Does development mostly take place through an exchange of documents and compartmentalized workflows? Are there a lot of live chats between writer, editor? Open Owl is one of the most cooperative game companies I've ever worked with. They're small, but everybody is incredibly good at what they do. They're incredibly focused and are in love with the games they're making, and so they really just want. There's not a lot of ego. They really just want to make the best game. I believe Stuart brought this concept to them, but Stuart and Derek, who was the producer, were working very closely together on the development of this. And then when they brought me in as an editor, I had a lot of meetings with them, very, very cooperative. That's not always the case, but in the case of Open Owl, it definitely is. It is solo player only. You could play with friends where you're kind of discussing what decisions to make, but it is just a single. It's all about Luma and her decisions, and so you do one action, roll the dice, do the next action, roll the dice. As far as expansions, they are definitely looking into doing more Storyfold stories. I know that is true. There's not been anything concrete started on it, but as a system, I think it's amazing. It's very easy to pick up and just start playing. The mechanics are fairly simple, but there's still a decent amount of strategy in them in what you choose to do when and how quickly you go because you're always on this time crunch with the shadow moving towards you. But yeah, I think uh, Storyfold has done fairly well in stores, and they are definitely looking into doing some more stories, whether they come from Stuart or other authors. That'll be to be seen yet. Okay, it says, are there things unique to an evergreen game that might be replayed that you had to consider when editing text that you might not consider a story? That's a great question. I I didn't focus on that in this one as much as I do in some other things, but that is definitely a consideration. If you, uh, I'll use an example that is not something that I've written. I am currently playing obsessively a board game called Vantage, which is just this huge exploration game. You get a location, which is a beautiful piece of artwork. It's what you see in front of you. You're playing with other people. You've all crash landed on this planet, and the other people are looking at their scenes and they can describe them to you. It's a little bit of a role-playing experience because you're not together, and apparently you don't have cell phones, or I guess the cell towers, aren't existent. So you can't you can't take a picture of where you are, but you can describe to the people what you're seeing. Um, and that one is all about replaying. You have a mission, sometimes you pick up a destiny, and so the writing has to be pretty you see a lot of it gets repeated because they're reusing things, but it has to always feel like it's the first time you've seen it, even if you have seen it a few times. And that is tough because you do start to see people skipping. Vantage has like 1,700 cards, so you're still seeing a lot of new stuff. With Storyfold, I think after a few playthroughs and you kind of know what's going on, I like to think that the writing is crisp enough and clean enough that you'll enjoy it a second or third time. And obviously, if you're reading the cards, you're going to need to know what happens to affect the game. But hopefully, you're enjoying the story enough that you enjoy reading it as again. But it is tough, and I'm not sure I have a really good answer to that. I think that's all the questions, unless I missed some. Yeah, that looks like that's all the questions. Um, well, I want to thank everybody here and in SFWA, Maggie and Misha, and everybody else on the technical side for getting all this set up this weekend. I want to thank Kij and Richard and Madeline and Mark for spending time with us this evening and showing off the amazing work they're doing. We hope to do more of these showcases in the future. Uh, it's a great way to for game makers, game writers to show off what they're doing. Fiction authors are always doing readings, but it's really hard to do as you can see from the technical issue I had with mine, it's hard to show off a game in a way that is as compelling as reading some fiction. So I want to thank everybody. I think before we log off, I'm just going to ask everybody that's here to just real briefly talk about what you're working on now. Let's start with Kij. We'll kind of go backwards. You're still muted, Kij.
At least it told me that. No, it's like I'm very excited to be working on Bugwick.
Right.
A whole bunch of things I'm changing, and then I'm starting to pull together some thinking about, because I'd like to do a solo game, just to see because I feel like there's something really interesting that could be done. There's a fairly limited number of formats that those are taking yet, and I want to see if there's a possibility of something else.
Okay. Madeline, what are you working on next?
I am currently working on I just got notes from the editor for issue 3 for Morgana Pendragon. I'll be fulfilling Pike's Peak through 3 and 4 in early January. I'm waiting for the final art to come in for issues 3 and 4 of Lady Mechanica. So yeah, I've got a lot of balls in the air depending on what comes in first.
Excellent. Richard.
So I am finishing up Silver Age, and then I am working as editor on J Dragon's Prince of Hounds, a space game, very inspired by Rogue Trader and Spelljammer and other sort of fantasy space games. And then I think from there I am constantly debating what the next project will be, but it'll be revisiting one of my older titles and sort of updating it. So yeah.
Okay. And Mark.
I am looking at expanding my game advertising and anti-heroes, which is sort of like cyberpunk Mad Men. And expanding it from 12 pages to 36 to give players a bit more fun.
And as I mentioned, I'm working on Threshold. Threshold is also from Open Owl. They just had their crowdfunding. It'll be being created and developed and written over the next year and come out sometime in 2027. And it is the elevator pitch is what if World of Warcraft was a board game? What if you could play an MMO on a game board with a map and it's open world and quests? And I am writing the through line main quest storyline that takes you from level 1 to level 40 across 3 regions, and a fourth will be in an expansion. And also writing a ton of the side quest content and adventures and events that happen. So I'll be working on that for about the next 6 months. So I'm very excited. I mentioned I love OpenL. They are my gem of a big board game company that loves story, and I'm hoping I can write for them for a long time. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for attending out there. I hope you enjoyed what we had to showcase today.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So long, everybody.
Go.